it's very important that we give comment. It really, the board needs to do two things. They need to consider to get rid of some things because there's just too much work to do. And then they need to decide how to prioritize the work. And that makes a difference too, because low priority items end up not being discussed. You know, then they have to turn around and be reconsidered 2 years from then. So, so comments are important. They need the input from the community in order to especially do that prioritization. Phyllis.
Yeah, Loretta, can you screen share? I've got a document saying docketing consideration for comp plan amendments. I want to make sure I'm on the same page that you are.
It's called items for 2024-25 Thurston County docketing considerations.
Yes, okay, with some BOC briefings and staffing and funding constraints.
No. No.
Okay, I'm on a different page than, can you screen share what you're talking about?
No, maybe. Yes, I guess I can. That was not my intention because we don't have enough time to go through it, but
well, I want to make
I'll just make sure that you're on the right document. Oh gosh, this might be a little hard.
What I have, it has county initiated projects, comp plan, development code.
This is it. This is the document that I'm talking about.
Okay,
if it doesn't look like this, then look for an email from me that you would have received 2 days ago.
Right.
Okay.
It is in the agenda there at the very top. It says background documents, and those contain all the documents we're going to be talking about. So go back to your agenda.
Okay.
And that is vitally important because it has one, you know, multiple items on there. I am not going to talk about each of them. We don't have enough time.
Okay.
The important thing to talk about is that there was a briefing this morning. There will be written comment periods. We now know what the dates are and take action. And then I'm going to talk about some projects that I'm not going to, that I'm going to recommend that we definitely say no to. Okay. The other thing I want to do is to do it, to share with you the part of the place on the comprehensive, on the county's website where all of this is located. And it's here, and the link on my document there is the same thing. It leads you to this point, and you'll see it looks a lot alike. But what's in there is a place for public participation opportunities, and it's either on the comprehensive plan, those are amendments, or on the development code, those are just changes. And then there's theoretically docket overview of projects, and right now it's not very helpful the way it's done, but it'll get more helpful here before you have to comment. And then the public comments received. And you need to give your input here in this public participation opportunity on that form. And when you pull up the form, a key thing that you will see, I think I can get to it here, after your name, address, and things like that, is you select projects you wish to comment on. And you by individual project, then you comment on each one of them. So you have to know what projects you're talking about. You can't talk in individual items. And so I probably will comment on every single one of them, or almost every single one of them. So that's the process there. Now,
quick question, Loretta, what did the board decide anything this morning? Did you say they decided something this morning?
They set a comment period. Comment period, February 22 or 23 through March
Okay.
13th to
Okay.
14th. That's what
All
they
right.
did this morning, yes. The key things that I am going to say we ought not have on the docket that I want to definitely oppose are the sections, my page 2 in my document, which were all of those that relate to creating rural resource industrial zones. And there are quite a few of them. And in particular, the industrial zones, and I believe there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 of them that are outside the UGA. There are 2 others that are currently outside the UGA, but the proposal is to put them inside the UGA of the Grand Mound, and so they might become part of Grand Mound. Industrial areas outside of the UGAs mean that they're in the rural area, and we talked a couple meetings ago about what it is to be rural, and industrial didn't match what we said was what we wanted in rural. So it's incompatible with our concept of what is rural. Also, there are a number of these have to do with lands that are environmentally sensitive and therefore should not be developed more extensively. And industrial lands is by nature a more intensive development than rural one, resource 1 to 5. On my list, I made a mistake on the second bulleted industrial land proposal, and it's called a UP Castle. People often say Up Castle, but it's really the letters U and P. That's the name of a company that owns some of the land. And the mistake was I said that that particular land was zoned R1 to 20, which means that it's R1 to 20 is a special zone in the county where you have it calls for more diminished development on the land because it's environmentally sensitive or hazardous, one of the two. I was wrong, and as I listened this morning, I discovered my error, and it is actually zoned like almost all the rest of the rural county as 1 to 5. And all that information that I wrote there about the R1 1 to 20 instead applies to the very next item. So I just put it, I got it ahead of myself. It applies to the Black Lake quarry on in the Little Rock area. There are 2 Black Lake quarries in this listing, but this is the one that's near Little Rock. And that's the very next one. And I oppose all of these regardless. But it would be inaccurate if you said what I implied there, that the UP Castle is zoned as a sensitive area. It's simply zoned for agriculture, for mining, or for housing, 1 to 5. And these people want to change the zoning so that it could somehow apply to be industrial. And it's by travel distance, it's quite a distance from any intersection of I-5. So it doesn't make a lot of sense in that particular area to go that distant of an area to get to I-5. So otherwise, I do want you to try to read all of these things and see what's there. I think it's kind of valuable to read what other people are saying as input, and on that website, you'll be able to see, they've got it set up now. The moment you add information and make your comments, everybody else can see them. So you'll be able to see what other people are seeing, and just make sure you make your comments before the 13th of March. Phyllis, another question?
Yeah, so are we recommending that we have a local good governance official set of comments?
No, I am
Individual
not
comments?
recommending that at all. What's
Let me
really
finish.
quite important, Phyllis, the most important thing is to get quantities of responses, not not individual, I mean, get a lot of people to respond and get people engaged and get people talking about these things and looking at them. It is not valuable to have a comment from an organization.
Okay, so individual comments then,
Yes.
by March 13th, you said?
13th, yes. So I guess we'll meet one time before then, so I'll be able to remind you. So I think that's about all the time we have for this subject, right, Madeline?
Yep.
Thank you. This is really helpful.
Well, before we talk to Tom, we do have a quorum. Does anybody not approve of the January minutes that were attached and sent out earlier? Or do we need to defer this until next meeting?
I have one correction.
Okay,
I'm not sure which page it's on exactly, but it says
I think,
in the section,
I corrected it. You sent it to me, right? Is there something else that you didn't send to me? Because there is something that you sent to me that I remember that changed.
yeah. The title, updates related to LGGC issues, just the sentence right before that, where it says Tom agreed to keep the notes and minutes from the staff and put them on a new website hosted by Thurston County. I did not agree. I am not doing that. Staff, jurisdictional staff is doing that. So rather than Tom, you could say jurisdictional staff agreed to keep notes and minutes from the staff meeting and put them on a new website.
So that's for that collaborative thing, that climate.
Yeah, right. It's under the Thurston
Okay.
Climate Mitigation Collaborative, right?
Okay, and so it was staff agreed to?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll change it.
okay, so other than that, everything's fine, and I'm recording today because Esther is our note taker and she has a hurt hand. So she's not gonna be able to type really fast. So is anybody willing to step up as the next facilitator? Next meeting? If you're not volunteering, we'll get it worked out between now and the next meeting, I imagine.
Are we doing this on a quarterly basis still?
Yeah,
My understanding is it's 3 months at a time.
I'd be willing to facilitate if it's my turn.
thank you, Tara.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think Esther's the note taker one more time. Yep, okay. So we'll worry about that later. And so then I think we can move on to Tom because he did an excellent list that was just fabulous, and take it over, Tom.
All right. First of all, I want to give lots of credit to Loretta for not only prompting me. I've been trying to figure out how to do this conversation, how to do this discussion, and she clued me into a couple of great resources that she passed on to me. So what I did was I took a much longer list of items published by the for the climate element of comprehensive plans, published, I believe, by the Department of Commerce. And I pared it down to only those things that they had marked critical on their list, and then summarized a number of things even from there. So it was somewhat manageable. And then I thank you also, Loretta, for giving us a great rundown of probably most of the climate related items in the county's current comprehensive plan. So that was also from Loretta. So thank you, Loretta, for those great resources. What I'd like to do, what I think we might want to come out with from today's discussion is some sense and agreement about which of those items that the state thinks are critical items we want to address, and which organization wants to address, or organizations want to address, items in various categories. And so what I thought I'd do is go through, it's organized by what they're calling, hold on a second, let me get the terminology, climate sector nexus categories, which are the things you notice on, I think, the third or fourth column. I indicated it's either like agriculture and food systems, buildings and energy, cultural resources, etc. Right? So what I thought we'd do is take that document, sort of one of those categories at a time. I can summarize for you what's in the category. I've got some notes here that I can work from to do that verbally, and then open it up to, all right, which organizations would like to, feel strongly about this category, would like to be part of developing our response in this particular area. Building from either what's on the DOC's list, or the climate mitigation plan itself, or other or other ideas and thoughts that you all might have. Lynn, you have a question?
Well, yeah, I just spent time reading it before now. It's so long that even if you, I mean, you could spend your whole time just summarizing it. So I'm not quite sure how this works time-wise.
Well, how about we try it out for a couple of categories? And if it's not, we'll take another approach. Maybe we'll see some other way we can do this. Another way we
I
could
would
do it-
also add,
Yes,
I'm sorry, Tom, I didn't mean
go
to
ahead. Go ahead.
jump on you. I would also add that I wouldn't feel comfortable making that commitment without talking to my board first about which areas they would want to emphasize.
Tara, I think is a little bit different. Tom's request isn't which priority does the league have or anything. It's will the league take on a responsibility for our visit with the county to play the leadership role in leading the input we're going to give to the county in a particular area. And so each of our organizations really should volunteer to take on something. It might be a little bit out of our strength area, but of course, anything related to water, the league has already some really good background on and should be able to be a leadership person on, for example. And so, whereas other organizations might not have that water strength that the league does.
Another thing that I see your hand up, Lynn, but I just want to make one more comment. I'll get to you. We don't need to feel obligated to take on everything on this list, right? So don't feel like, there's pressure that somebody has to sign up for absolutely all. Somebody has to sign up for each, we have to cover all these categories. We might just say, hey, I'm not sure, nobody in the room today is sure that they're ready, or their organization is ready to speak to these categories. And so we'll just let that one go for now. That's fine. Yes, Lynn.
So I truly am not trying to be difficult. I'm actually trying to help us use our time effectively. Because of the way the chart was put together, I'm not sure how many there are. I think there's maybe about 100. Maybe Tom, how many there are.
Yeah, I haven't counted the individual items, but there are 10 categories, and that's how I'm going to lead the
Right.
discussion, is
Yeah, so I
category
do.
by category.
Okay, so I do think that there's in the neighborhood of 100, and they are by no means all equal. Some are way more important than others. So, I mean, that's one thing, is I think our group needs to try to get our head around a little bit, like actual priorities. And then I think the other thing is, at least for me, as I read them, many of them are framed by the Department of Commerce in ways that, to me, miss the mark. Like they are prescribing a solution which misses the solution. And so I would not actually want to then promote like, okay, yes, this is the solution. And some examples of that is they talk about certain things about agriculture, and they're sort of hinting at regenerative agriculture without ever using the word regenerative agriculture. In other places, they identify problems that would be solved by maintaining trees and never mention maintaining trees. So, you know, we can go through these one at a time, but it seems to me like it might be more useful if organizations could do what Loretta was just saying and say like, the league already has a concern about water, so we will look at these ones that are about water and we will be prepared to speak to these ones that are about water.
Let's let Tom get started and we'll get.
That's really close to my original intent, actually. My intent is not that we identify item by item, but we take an area and, you know, with these items in mind, or with these suggestions in mind and other things we know about that area, you know, are you personally, Lynn, or is your organization interested in addressing trees? And I think you probably are. So then we give ourselves time. We're not going to try to figure out what our proposals would be today. We're simply going to divide the work and then give ourselves, you know, a couple of 3 weeks to figure out what we want to say about that area. Okay, does that make a little more sense?
Yes, it just didn't sound like what you were proposing, but yes, that
Yeah.
sounds good.
So, when we say who's gonna kind of take the lead on speaking to a certain subject area,
Mhm.
you're talking about in a written document, or for the comment period deadline, or are we talking about at a public hearing? And if so, do we know when that public hearing would be?
So I apologize. I didn't actually do a very good job of setting the frame for this. This is focused on a discussion that has already been scheduled with county staff for our next meeting in March. So what I'm talking about here, what I'm suggesting is that in that discussion, each of us decide which of these areas we would like to discuss, we would like to present proposals for with county staff so that they have our proposals and our suggestions and our recommendations for that area. And so we're just
Okay.
dividing up the work so that it's not all, for example, you don't want me presenting all that stuff because you all have great ideas. Just because I happen to represent a climate organization, this is much broader than any one organization. So that's the sense, is we're just getting prepared for this March meeting. That's what we're doing.
And
So-
let me add a little bit, Tara, to that, is that we're not at the stage of hearings. We're not at the stage of analyzing a particular policy. So no one's ready to make decisions one way or another. Staff are right now at the stage of which items are we going to bring forward to be on the work table? And we,
I
as a
understand.
community group, are giving our input as these are the items we want to be on that work table. And we're bringing that because of this perspective. And so we're helping set the table. And that's what our conversation is all about, setting the table.
I understand. So are we talking about the March meeting, the reg meeting, or the meeting that we were going to have like quarterly with staff and this whole group?
Yes, and so that's March 13th at 3 o'clock. It's the
Yes, the latter
LGGC
meeting that you talked about.
meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Proceed.
Okay. So let's charge ahead, and I'm gonna take the first area here, and I prepared a little help. Hold on, a little thing to help us track who's going to do what, or who's interested in taking on various areas. By let's see, there's my share screen. Okay. And- Huh. Okay, well, just trust me. I've got a little spreadsheet, a little document that I'll do my best to keep track of these things.
I'm gonna write it down also.
Okay, I'm not. I think I got my my items up on my computer too complicated. I can't find it. So the first area is called agriculture and food systems. And that includes things like preserving agricultural land, aligning existing conservation programs with the Climate Commitment Act, expanding food security, adapting water storage and farming to changing conditions, promoting research on agricultural resilience, promoting fossil-free pesticides, fertilizers, and fuels, and whatever else we think would go into agriculture. But those are some of the things that they had on the Department of Commerce's list. And Loretta, you have a comment.
I put
You're
my
can
name
you,
down.
what's
Put my
that?
name
She's
down for
over
that.
there.
Oh, okay. All right. And I have this organized by organization.
And so I'll represent the Farmland Trust, which is not a member of this organization.
Okay, but I'll just put your name here
Mhm.
somewhere. Okay, and anyone else?
I was just emailing Tony Usabelli for Sierra Club, asking him if he would attend and be willing to take the lead on energy or transportation sections.
Okay, I'll put Sierra Club down then.
Okay.
Well, wait a second. Energy or transportation sections, not the agricultural sections.
Right.
Okay, when we get to energy and transportation,
Oh,
let's,
okay. I'm sorry. I was jumping ahead. I thought you were asking which sections can
yeah.
you think of? All right.
So
Sorry.
I'm wondering who, is there anyone else besides Loretta that would like to look in more detail at and address agriculture and food systems during our March meeting with county staff?
I'll sign up for that.
Okay, I will put Sierra Club in that then.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to buildings and energy. So that includes things like buildings that reduce and treat stormwater, increasing our building resilience, especially with regard to climate change, renewable energy conservation and efficiency, new buildings that aim toward net zero, phasing out fossil gas, incentives for green building certification, adaptive use of existing buildings, and preserving and weatherizing buildings in overburdened communities. So I know that my organization has an interest in that. So I will put TCAT down. Other folks?
Well, Tony's got expertise in that area too, so,
Okay, so I'll put Sierra Club down as well, eh?
yeah. Well, here's hoping he can join us.
Okay,
Is he-
great. I'll go back to my screen so I don't see any other hands raised. So we'll move on. Next area is, pardon me, is cultural resources and practices.
Tom, you're hard to hear when you turn your head sideways.
Okay, thank you. That's the problem with having written notes. Put it in the right position. Cultural resources and practices. Protect ecosystems to meet tribal treaty rights and native plant nursery and seed banks. Who's interested in that? Going once, going twice? Okay, we'll move on. Economic development. Green jobs pipeline for frontline communities. Purchasing from local businesses, broadband, small-scale community-owned renewable energy, and anything else you can think of in the economic development area. I think TCAT will probably address that.
Tom, was it the previous one or that area? Which area mentioned the idea of recycling buildings, you know, taking old ones and making them new?
I think that's probably buildings and energy.
Also,
Oh, so we haven't gotten to that yet. Okay.
No, I just read that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I hope that particular idea really gets lifted up. That seems to me quite critical right now when we have all these empty office buildings sitting around and a homelessness problem.
Right. Well, you know what? I think that also comes up as I look at the categories. I think it also comes up in the zoning and development area.
Okay, well, I
Yeah.
just hope that that one will get really lifted up.
Okay. Is that
and I-
something you'd like to speak to, or?
I don't feel like I have any particular expertise. I just feel like that was one of the more excellent ideas on the list.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I have one comment also in that. Is that including like septic systems and like composting toilets or constructed wetlands? Would that be in there?
That's probably in ecosystems, or I didn't
Okay.
see it in buildings,
All right,
and I didn't see it in economic development.
okay.
Oh, Tom, I just wanted to mention that the Habitat for Humanity person could not make it today. So you might want to connect with them later and see if they want one of these.
Okay, that's a good idea.
And they
Uh,
might really be able to address that reusing of buildings thing.
Put them as a question mark, just to remind myself, under buildings and energy and under economic development. Okay. Let's move on to ecosystems. Here I expect we'll have a lot more response or interest, most likely. So that includes protecting healthy watersheds, salmon restoration and recovery, protecting and restoring wetlands, protecting riparian ecosystems, restoring floodplains, increasing aquifer and habitat, reducing stream sedimentation, legal rights of nature, improve habitat quality and connectivity, improved plans generally, identify ecosystem services benefits, increasing tree canopy, climate smart forest management, education incentives, and protecting and preserving coastal ecosystems.
It's like Abby's got her hand up.
Okay, I would expect that. Hold on a moment. All right.
It strikes me, Tom, it might help to break that one up a little bit. Like, I don't know if Abby wants to speak to all of that. Probably she wants to speak to the rights of nature part of it. I don't want to speak to all of it, but I'd like to speak to the trees part of it.
Well, why don't we put identify multiple organizations in this area?
Yeah.
And so we got let's see, rights of nature.
And Clean Black will do it.
So I'll put
I had one question about the spreadsheet. I just want to double check that I'm understanding. So the first column, the climate measure goal, is a TCAT organizational goal for input on Thurston County's comprehensive plan. Is that correct?
That's
TCAT came
not,
up with
that's not quite correct.
Okay.
This spreadsheet is lifted pretty directly. All the contents here is lifted pretty directly from a Department of Commerce document.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So-
Okay,
So it's
that's what
Department
I
of
think I missed that piece.
Commerce's, yeah, and it's either goals or measures, I think, are the two categories. And I tried to indicate which ones were goals.
Okay.
I
And
wasn't
so,
probably
and so
not 100% on that, but
Abby, the Department of Commerce had a whole work team on, okay, it's all brand new, climate change is all brand new. What are the things we would have, we need indicators for? What are the things we're trying to measure? And so a whole very diverse, and they looked at racial diversity and economic diversity as they did this, as a whole diverse group of people fought it out with each other about what should be on this list. That's why, you know, there's not an equality between one line and another at all, because it was just this massive group of people working on it.
Well, I think it's awesome that Rights of Nature is on that.
Yeah, unmute,
you
unmute.
put your mic off, Abby. But
Oh, I
think we
I
got
said
it.
it's pretty awesome that the Right of Nature is on a list coming from the Department of Commerce. And yes, we
Yeah.
would love to be there to speak on that.
Okay. So Charlotte, you had a comment or a question?
Unmute, Charlotte.
I think you're muted.
Still can't hear you.
Something's
hear
wrong
you.
with your audio there.
This problem has happened for Charlotte before, where even when she's unmuted, her mic doesn't work.
You could write it in the chat, Charlotte. Can't hear you. Put it in the chat.
We can't hear you,
I think
Charlotte.
she's saying okay.
All right, I'm gonna,
Either that or she can't hear us.
Yeah.
can't hear you.
Okay, well, while
So
she's,
Charlotte, put whatever you had in the chat, and
I'm gonna
uh,
include Black Lake Alliance will speak to, like, you know, riparian things and wetlands and that kind of thing. Wetland.
what's the
Probably wants to
organization
say what
again
Black
there?
Hill Audubon,
Okay,
Um,
okay,
so-
Audubon. Okay,
right, Charlotte? That what you want? Black Hill Audubon? Okay.
all right. And Lynn, you had something?
well, yeah, I just want to make a general comment. So, you know, Commerce has basically come up here with a list very similar. I mean, it's not identical, but very similar to what's in the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan. So, you know, in theory, the county has already committed itself to many, if not all, of these things. And so I don't know that we have time to address this today, but I kind of feel like one of the things that needs to be addressed is, what are we really saying to them? Are we saying, please do what you already committed yourself to? Or, I mean, you know, gee, look, the Commerce is telling you now what you already committed yourself to.
Yes,
Uh,
yes,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
exactly right. We
Yeah.
need to say that. Because because the counties definitely can choose to do a lot less.
I'd say what's in their comp plan now is pretty nothing. In
Not
terms
Yeah,
of,
so this
not
is-
their comp plan, their climate mitigation plan. Their climate
Right.
mitigation plan covers all this stuff.
okay,
Right, but the comp plan needs to cover all
Yeah,
this stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
nothing in there. It's all like should do this and should do that, and it's a
Yeah,
very
and
broad
the
plan.
yeah, the climate mitigation plan is at still a kind of a high level, and it doesn't commit anybody to anything because there's no governance structure around it.
Right.
This would put the governance structure of the county, I think, behind some of these specific items, and open the possibility, if not require them to enforce these things through codes and perhaps ordinances.
Sure, but we did already agree at a previous meeting that we were gonna ask them to put the entire mitigation plan into the comp plan.
So county staff doesn't quite work at that level. You need to kind of think about, think like when I was a kid and you had that little toy workbench where you could put the round peg into the round hole and the square one. You have to actually tell them about, now I want the round peg to go into the round hole. So you just have to do it.
So I have.
Okay, Tara?
So it sounds to me like in some areas where they've already made some strides or commitments, that you want to stroke them in this process as well, and encourage them, rather than just all sort of negative feedback. Also make them feel good about some of the things that they've said or done in the past, and reinforce that notion. You know, we've been so pleased that the the commission decided, long ago, to make a commitment to do X, Y, or Z. We want to make sure that that gets included in the comp plan and support you in that endeavor, kind of thing, right?
Good point, Tara.
And is that, are we always going to also say what's the enforcement of these things? Because as it is now, the environmental laws are not really enforced now. So if we just put in stuff without an enforcement, I think we have to.
Yeah, I think there's some very good language in some of these items about that very thing. You know, about creating, for example, incentive funds to actually do these things, creating ordinances that require these things. So I think it helps to bridge that gap. Okay,
And-
shall we?
And
shall we
this
con-
time in the comprehensive plan, for the first time ever, we have a 5-year check-in. And in order to have that be meaningful related to climate change, we have to either now or later on say, these are the targets we want you to be measuring 5 years from now. Because that's the only way, that's kind of at the high level way of checking, are we making any progress on this at all? So think about and bring up, if you have them already in mind, or later on in the process, bring up what the measures ought to be.
Right. So I want to get back to previously. So for the ecosystems area, I have Lynn, I have Black Hills Audubon Society, I have Rights of Nature Initiative.
And Clean Black Lake Alliance.
Okay.
Tom
Yes.
or Loretta, is it appropriate, like the 72 actions in the climate mitigation plan? Is it appropriate to just ask for those actions to be inserted in the relevant chapters?
One of the things that I wanted to do, but I just kind of ran out of time, was match those items to this list through, by referencing them. And that would, I think, give us a better view of exactly, what the correspondence between the two is, and where. And the other thing I want to say is, that wouldn't be a bad thing, but those are, again, very, if you look at those items, they're very general, and they don't really require anybody to do anything. And this gets more requiring people to do things. And that probably isn't in itself sufficient. Even what's in the climate mitigation plan may not be sufficient to achieve the goals that are in the plan in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So we can certainly suggest, you all feel free to identify other things that need to be done to achieve our local goals.
Yeah, I did not feel like this had much more teeth than the mitigation plan did. I felt like it repeated very similar kind of language.
Okay, if we don't hold
Let's-
questions and comments, we're not gonna get through this. Tom,
Yeah.
hold your comments, please.
Thank you. So the next area is emergency management. And that includes building staff expertise and skills and competency in the climate impacts of that would impact emergency situations, wildfire resilience strategies, and improving plans for extreme weather and extreme heat. So
I would be willing to address myself only to the part about wildfire resiliency, and I'm sure Charlotte as well could address herself to that.
True, Charlotte? That true, yeah, she's saying yes, okay.
okay, and Charlotte again is Black Hills Audubon.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. All right, next area is health and well-being. Respond to rapid population growth and decline, especially in its impact on housing needs. Subsidies to overburdened communities for electrification, equitable access to green space, urban heat resilience strategies, and providing cooling units and heat pumps for extreme heat. So health and well-being.
Yeah, this is sort of a mixed category again, but I would be willing to address myself to the heat island and cooling issue, as I feel they somewhat missed the boat there and didn't talk about trees there.
Okay.
that's another thing to ask, habitat, I would think.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
I think that's another one you could ask Habitat about.
Oh, okay. Good point. And TCAT will certainly speak to that too. Okay, then we've got transportation, and this is a little bit longer list of items here. Expanding public transportation use, multimodal plans for reducing single occupancy vehicle dependence, subsidies for EVs, bicycles for low income folks, reducing vehicle miles traveled through a variety of strategies, improving resilience of transportation system, reflecting the actual cost of parking through no parking, through eliminating parking minimums and perhaps introducing parking maximums, reducing parking requirements in multimodal areas, and transportation system efficiency.
No, I think that maybe Judy might, the Olympians for Smart Development, might have something to say about that. So you can ask,
Okay,
yeah,
and Judy is with,
Olympians for Smart Development and Livable Neighborhoods.
oh, I
she's
see, okay, yeah,
She indicated may not be an organization anymore, but they might still ask them.
okay. I'll
And
put
then
an X
hopefully
there.
Tony from Sierra Club, if he can attend, because he's following all the transportation issues.
Okay, great. Let's move on to water resources. Thank you for using your voices to tell me, because I don't necessarily see your faces right now while I'm reading through some of this stuff. So thank
So
you.
this is Tara. Go
Yes.
ahead and put the League of Women Voters on there. I'll see if what I can find.
Okay.
Because I
Happy-
wasn't on that committee. So I, maybe Karen Fraser, for example, would be willing to speak to that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Tara, ask if Karen can attend the meeting. That would be great.
Yeah, that would have been my thought. My name is Tara, by the way,
Oh,
folks.
Tara, I'm
Tara.
sorry. Yeah,
Or TJ, if that's easier.
okay. Tara, thank you. How about water
And
resources?
and I know
Go
this
ahead.
is backing up a moment, but maybe put under cultural resources and practices,
yeah,
League of Women Voters down with a question mark, and I'll check into that. You know, we
Okay.
did that tribal study,
right, yeah,
so, you know, we may have some folks that could deal with
yeah,
that.
Carol would probably want to.
Wonderful. All right. Water resources includes sustainable water resource management and fostering collaboration to provide water to people, fish, and farms.
I put Clean Black Lake there too. Clean Black Lake will say something about it.
Black Lake Alliance,
Yeah, yeah.
and the league,
And,
Tara,
yeah, and Sierra Club.
what Sierra Club?
Hmm. When this is all over, can we get a kind of a clean copy of who's kind of focusing on which subject
be-
areas?
It'll be in the minutes.
Okay, sounds good, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that'll be important to so that if we've missed something or I've missed something, got something wrong, you can correct us. And then finally, zoning and development, increase housing diversity and supply especially in the UGA, density limits, middle housing, micro housing, inclusionary zoning, infill, higher intensity land uses in urban villages and transit corridors, increase resilience of built environment, ecosystems, and communities, development and redevelopment that is resilient to climate change, consider climate change in floodplain management, reduce residential development in the wildland urban interface, and transfer development rights.
I
Lot-
think again, Judy and also the Habitat group might really want to speak to those issues.
Okay. So, so that's Olympian for smart development.
Yeah.
Also, the one item that's in there about the WUI, again, Charlotte and I would address to that, although it's sort of out of date with what's happening now, but anyway, we could address to that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
And Charlotte says with the Audubon,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. All right. Well, that's it. Thank you very much for helping me think about these things and contributing, offering to contribute to this discussion with the county. I think this will make it very productive. I think what we have to do next is those of you who agreed to participate on the same, in the same category may want to coordinate your thinking, your work a bit, uh, together. So I guess what we probably want to do is get this matrix out as soon as possible so that people can start doing that, and so that we're ready for the March 13th meeting. And we also might want to think about how to manage that conversation. I'm not sure how much time we've allocated to the conversation with the county, but we want to think a little bit about how much time we're going to give to each of these topics and how we're going to do that sort of logistically and in terms of the meeting agenda. That's all I've got for now. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. And the next one up is Lynn.
I am wondering if we need to address what Tom just asked, which is how long we're allotting next time to the discussion with the county.
Well, somebody's gonna have to work with the facilitator, I think, to figure that out.
Well, Tara will be the facilitator, but I mean, we as a group need to give some direction about how much time we want to spend on that.
It's-
How much time has the county agreed to be with us? Do we know that?
Well, at least a half an hour, and spent a little bit more than that. I think climate change is the biggest change in newest thing of all in the comprehensive plan. This is the first time any counties have been working on this. So it's worth our time. It's worth whatever time we can squeeze out of our next meeting, not even more than a half an hour.
Yeah,
So-
I was gonna say that just with our conversations today, I mean, at least an hour.
Yeah. Really.
So if we're saying at least an hour, then are we gonna make our meeting longer? I mean, we do have still other agenda items. I agree, I don't see how it would get squished down into half an hour.
I think this is the priority.
Ara, you seem to be speaking, but you were muted. You're still muted. You're still muted.
There you go.
It seems to me that if we want them to be on the line with us for at least an hour, that we should give them that heads up.
Agreed.
I will certainly do that. Mhm.
Okay, so it sounds like we're agreeing to maybe have a longer meeting next time and to spend an hour on this. So, okay. All right, now Madeline had asked me to go on to the next agenda item. So this is a good follow-on actually to what we were just talking about. So last time Tom had reported a little bit on the mitigation steering committee, you know, what they were choosing as priorities for this year. And I had commented, which Tom agreed with, that they're not making very much progress in terms of, you know, goals that they identified originally and have pretty small, modest goals they're going to work on this year. And one of the things that came up for me is last year around this time, the high school students, in response to the fact that Lisa partially had been very, very impacted by many years ago, them coming to the Olympia City Council and giving them a failing grade for what they were doing on climate change. The students decided that they were going to give grades to the different cities, Olympia, Tumwater, and Lacey, on how they were doing on the climate mitigation plan. And so last year they went to each one in turn and did a die-in and graded them. In their process of doing that, they met with me at one point, and it was kind of a challenging process because the students actually didn't know anything what was in the mitigation plan and didn't understand a number of the items, but were attempting to grade the items. I mean, it was just kind of a challenging thing trying to help support them to do the work. And they wound up giving them, I think it was a C-, which I thought was somewhat generous, but anyway, they did that last year. They're sort of on to other things. In my reflections at the time about it, I thought, you know, they do need grading. They do need a feedback loop that's outside of their own little bubble. You know, they do a report once a year where they report on how they're doing, and it's always very congratulatory. And Tara said, you know, we need to congratulate them about what they're doing. Well, I hear you from the political point of view, but I have to say, so you congratulate them on the 2 things they've done out of 72? I don't know. It's kind of, you know, there's just not enough happening. And the suggestion has been made before that they go back and do the thing that they were supposed to do at the beginning, but ran out of time and money with the consultant, which is to put in actual measuring posts, you know, for their different goals, so they would actually have some way of evaluating it. They probably would have to hire a consultant again in order to do that, but you know, if they want to get something to happen, they need to get something to happen. So what I want to propose to this group, I mean, I've thought before about, for instance, my group giving them some sort of a report card. And I quickly realized that if only one group attempts to give them a report card, that group just becomes the negative group. And it becomes very easy for them to dismiss the feedback from one group as like, well, that's just that group's opinion. I think it would carry a lot more weight if this coalition of groups was willing to undertake something like this, that we actually look at the reports they have put out about what they have done, look at the 72 items they agreed to do, and that we make some kind of, I don't know if it's exactly a report card, but we make some kind of a feedback loop to them on, you know, are they meeting what we consider to be community expectation about climate work? And if not, then like, what do we suggest they do? Do they need to get benchmarking in there so something happens, etc.? So I want to open this up and hear what other people have to say. Do you think it would be useful for us as a coalition to try to give them feedback about how they're doing on the climate mitigation plan?
It might be helpful for me to also provide an update. There's been a meeting of the this Community Advisory Work Group within the Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative, which is this framework that they have in place for managing their work on the plan. I took my they invited suggestions for additional agenda items for our meetings. We have monthly meetings, and so I've been putting this item actually forward. The item being, how do we get back on track to meeting the goals in the climate mitigation plan? And so they weren't quite sure how to handle it, and we had a couple of discussions. And so what they've agreed to do is there's going to be a retreat among the Community Advisory Work Group, or the CAW, the Executive Committee, which is the 4 elected officials, one from each of the participating jurisdictions, and the staff, one from each of the jurisdictions, to, in part, in April. This retreat will be in April. And part of the purpose of that retreat will be to define an annual priority goal for next year. So, they've agreed to put this item in the agenda for that retreat. So this will be discussed during that retreat.
I thought you reported to us last time that they had set 3 goals for next year, and you told us what those were.
Those were the goals for this year.
Oh,
Those were the goals for this year.
oh, so now they're setting the
And-
goals for 2025?
Right.
At this
The
retreat.
priority goals
So
at
this
this
is
retreat.
So
Yeah,
this
so
is
it's not the only thing they're working on. Let me just also be clear about this.
Is
This
this
is
the
not the only
collaborative?
thing.
This is the collaborative committee?
Yeah, the
Okay.
Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative, right?
Okay, all right.
So it's work together on as a group, all 4 jurisdictions, and get all of their elected bodies on board to moving forward with that item, whatever it is, right? And so that's the idea behind it. And so as they discuss that, then the staff has agreed to put the question forward: how do we get back on track with our goals? We're off track. How do we get back on track? So that, and we will have one other community advisory work group meeting between now and then. And the purpose of that meeting will be doing preparation and making suggestions for what that priority goal ought to be for the coming year.
Okay, so that is helpful to know. I think the
Mhm.
question I'm asking the group, though, for me still stands. I feel like if anything, it would help put pressure onto that goal setting if they were getting feedback from the community that like, no, we don't think you've been doing enough. Go
When's
ahead,
this
Phyllis.
retreat? When is this retreat?
Retreat is in April. I don't know that a date has been set.
Okay.
Phyllis, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I guess offhand, I'm thinking that, I don't want to have this group take on the work that they should be doing, that, if this retreat materializes, I think it's appropriate for us to say, what are the goals? What are you accomplishing and how were they measured? Did you make it or not? And then provide feedback. Yes, you did 2 out of 72, but that we're recommending 15 for next year, something like that. I don't want to,
I'm not suggesting we do the work they're supposed to be doing. But the 72 goals already exist, as does their report of what they did last year towards the 72 goals. So what I'm suggesting is that we make comment on what they did last year and comment on whether we feel like they were working effectively on the plan or not.
Yeah, the other thought that occurs to me is we might want to combine that with, not in detail, but some positive things we think that they should do.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Instead of-
absolutely.
Instead of not doing.
Yeah.
That they should do
Okay,
now, right?
It's time for Abby to talk.
Well, okay, so far I've mainly heard Tom respond to my question. Nobody has actually said what they think about it.
I don't personally want to do it. Anybody else have an opinion?
What would be involved, what we'd have to, somebody have to look, I mean, I don't know if anybody has time to add another thing, but I mean, if you looked through it, could you give a report to us and then we could decide?
Lynn, I'd be happy to follow up. I'm just not certain which venue I use to give that input, that not enough work is being done to achieve these goals. We are not working in the right direction. We need to change the direction in order to achieve these goals. I'd be happy to communicate that. Which venue shall I use?
So my thought is, if there are some people who think that this would be useful to do, that we could create some sort of document that communicates some of that and bring it back to this group to share with this group. This is the document that we're hoping to put forward.
And me, since I'm a member of the Community Advisory Work Group, I could certainly be the avenue for bringing that forward to the collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I
And,
think you can handle the rest of this maybe through email because we have to move on. It's Abby's turn.
Okay, I hope that some of the people who said nothing will let me know what their thoughts are about it.
Abby, get going.
Yeah. Okay. And I might as well just say, while we're correcting pronunciations, it's actually Abby.
Oh,
It's-
I'm sorry, Abby.
That's quite all right. I know it's my dad did that. Okay, so I wanted to give a quick update on the Green Amendment that didn't really go very far. It kind of got introduced really late. It is as you know, a Green Amendment. It's run by this woman, Maya, that started it. She's on the East Coast. So it's really kind of a template that she has that she's doing across the country. Deborah Likhanoff had introduced it. We heard it was too late. There was a lot of support, but it didn't get out of committee. It went in front of Dolio's committee. The Right of Nature Initiative did make public comments, and our take on that was, one, it's giving rights to people again, and it's not giving rights to nature. And the other big component of that was that the state is the steward of enforcing the rights of citizens to this clean environment, which means if there's any problems, just like the kids in Montana, you have to sue the state and then force the state to do something. Okay, so that didn't go anywhere, and that leads us now to an initiative in Olympia. And we have a template that we've been working on using all the different rights of nature stuff that's been going around the country in Florida and Pennsylvania and stuff like that. And I'll send that around so everybody can take a look at it. And really what we did was we simplified it. We completely simplified it. So when they tried to give the rights to the Spokane River a couple years ago, it went up to the Supreme Court in Washington. And the Supreme Court in Washington said, you can't really do anything at the local municipality level that might interfere with the state's clean water or with the Clean Water Act, something legal mumbo jumbo like that. So what the template initiative is that we wrote, all it does is give legal standing to the ecosystem. So there is no fiscal responsibility. It doesn't mention that the city is the steward of those rights. It doesn't mention all it's doing is giving legal standing. It's keeping it really simple. So a lot of the work that we were doing on our end was trying to determine in the city of Olympia and Tumwater have the initiative process. It's about 6,000 signatures that we need in Olympia, was to try to define what ecosystem to give that rights to. And you may have remembered when I first started talking with this group a year ago, it was the Deschutes River. After talking to a lot of community members, looking at like Owl with Harry Branch and the problems they ran with Moxley Creek, and we were talking to people in Bellingham, the Duwamish River up in Seattle, Everett, and trying to get a handle on, is there some type of kind of statewide coordinated effort that we can do that would tie everyone together. We didn't really come to a conclusion with that, and we kind of wanted to leave it more to the local the local groups to see what they were doing, to see what they wanted. Which brings us now to the time frame of when this initiative is going to need to get filed. Signatures can't be more than 6 months old. Thurston County Auditor, at one time I called them up and they said they wanted the signatures in their office by August 1st. That there is no law that says that. She made that up, but that's what we're going to go by. So August 1st, so February 1st is when we can start collecting signatures, and then we have to get them to the auditor's office by August 1st. So we have a template initiative that says a couple different things. It's one sheet, it's super simple, but I wanted to kind of throw it to this group because the verbiage on the ecosystem that we want to protect is kind of where we're looking for the feedback. We had gone as broad as Lane County, Oregon is doing a rights for Lane County watershed. And their initiative, if you read it, is really big. It's really like, it's the watershed. It is every single thing, which I believe in. But we think that it's going to be a challenge for them when they are not only just fighting for this movement of the right for the ecosystem, but they're going to have, I think, a lot, and time will tell, of discussion around what that watershed means and what they're protecting. So we kind of brought it down to kind of talk about it with wetlands and waterways. Thinking that using existing definitions in this kind of, EPA stuff, that when you say, wetlands and you say waterways, that there is these very clear delineations of what that means. And that actually broadens this initiative out to then include like Bud Inlet, to include Moxley Creek, to include the parts of the Deschutes that are in Olympia. Okay. Love to hear what you think about that, because we want to move on this. So we think we got the legal language down, we got the process down. Where we're still looking for input in is, since you guys are hearing it for the first time, you're kind of like my focus group here. If you were to hear of an initiative in Olympia that's giving rights to Olympia's wetlands and waterways, what would you think? Anybody?
I think that the general public has a very poor understanding of wetlands. So they may not readily get why that's important. Not trying to be negative, but that's been my experience, is that they don't understand wetlands.
Right. I think there is going to be a big public education component of this, and I did send around in my document what they did last year with the EPA redefining what wetlands is and that half of the
Yeah.
wetland. Yeah.
I mean, I think you will have to do public education no matter what you choose the focus to be. But since this could be precedent setting, I think you'll have a higher chance of winning if it's something that you don't have to as much educate the public about. So like just even rivers, I think the public gets that more than they get like wetlands. That's just my opinion. There's other
Right.
people who work on wetland issues here, so they can probably comment on whether they think that's true.
I'm thinking, Abby, that, because you need to operate in this, minute, environment of the city of Olympia, and almost no ecological system has its reality in the city of Olympia. Almost all of them are like any wetland or waterways also comes from other places in the county and other places in the region. There's always a little problem. Like maybe Moxley Creek is only in Olympia, possibly. I don't know. I don't know where Moxley Creek starts, but that's going to be a little problem. So actually, that makes me think, well, why not just go the whole shebang and say watersheds, which obviously are not just in Olympia, but I think watersheds are a little bit more understandable to the humans than wetlands and waterways, even though it seems to encompass everything, which it probably encompasses too much, but that's okay.
Can we ask people to email you some feedback on this? Cause it's time for Esther to talk.
Yep, that sounds absolutely great. We'll take all suggestions, and I mean there have been ones too if it should be just like Bud Inlet or something like that. So please, yeah, contact me with all your suggestions. I would really appreciate it. Thank you guys.
I don't have much to say. I just have, Clean Black Lake Alliance is applying for a grant from Native Plant Society just to loan out weed rakes and do some educational things about fertilizer and native plants. And we would like a letter of support. So we're just asking for a letter of support that Madeline put in documents, and there's the draft grant that's pretty much what it is, just to put up signs and mailers, and people could use weed rakes, and trying to sort of without, being confrontational, suggest that there's a better way to do it than more herbicides and alum treatment. So that's all. Like, we can talk more about rights of nature, because that's all I have to say, and I hope people will, we have to get it in by March 1st. So if you could just email me and say, I gave a letter of support, that you can either write your own or just say it's okay, organization can sign on to it. We'd appreciate that.
Okay, well, we just did have one last thing, is Charlotte asked to introduce Jeff. And Jeff, could you unmute and just quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, thanks for letting me sit in on the meeting. I really learned a lot, so it's really great. I really appreciate what you guys are doing. It's amazing work. I'm a board member of the South Salish Progressive Alliance, which is a small local group dedicated to recruiting, training, and supporting strong, progressive, and democratic socialist candidates running for local office. We have a website, southsalish.org. Our priority issues and policies include clean energy, economy, housing for all, criminal justice reforms, and worker rights. But a lot of the stuff you guys are talking about here today we're very much aligned with. In this recent election, we played a central role in helping to elect members Emily Klaus, SPA members Emily Klaus and Sarah Tong. We call the South Salish Progressive Alliance SPA. And maybe I'll mention too, I'm struggling a little bit here with COVID. I'm in COVID recovery, and I'm fading a little bit, but I'm still glad I have the opportunity to do this. So I personally co-managed Emily's campaign, treasured on those campaigns, there was a pretty decent sized group of us that really focused on helping those candidates win those campaigns, play a pretty important role there. We're in regular communications with Emily Klaus and Sarah Tong. I will mention just briefly, I found your group today because Emily Klaus asked me about Beaver Creek rezone and what she should do on it. And so I just went down a little rabbit hole with research, and I came across Charlotte's article in Works in Progress, and she told me about your group, and I think it's very much aligned with a lot of our interests. So in any case, I think we're very aligned with what you're doing. And we also got
You can join us if you want, Jeff. We
Oh yeah,
can-
yeah. No, well, if you guys will have us, have me. So Robert Vanderpool is also a member of our organization, was recently appointed to the city council. That was very surprising and exciting for us. We did not anticipate that. We had actually worked with Emily to get him appointed to the Thurston County Planning Commission, but then he applied also to the Olympia City Council vacancy created in the last election, and he was appointed to that position. So he is he's very much aligned with everything that we're talking about here today. I just a little bit more about me. I was chair of Thurston County Democrats from 2021 to 2022 for 2 years. It's pretty much sucked up most of my life, but I learned a heck of a lot. Recently I've been involved in the Olympia for All campaign as well, which is sponsoring a renters' rights measure in Olympia. But with Robert helping us on the city council, possibly we may be able to actually get most of the provisions of that pushed through the council without having to go to an initiative process. And that's very similar to an initiative that passed in Tacoma this last election cycle.
What kind of rights? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Renters' rights.
Renters' rights, okay.
It's similar.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, we don't have a lot of time,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm a teacher. Just so you know, I've been teaching for 20 years at East Grace Harbor High School and in the Alma School District public school, working with alternative school students, older teens. I'm doing a lot of environmental science and outdoor education and math. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.